One, two, three.
Welcome to this second episode of the podcast from arol.dev, in which we are interviewing interesting people from the industry and Marco.
Interesting
today.
people.
Very interesting people from the industry, and nothing to just to have like a friendly talk and to see what kind of insights like these very interesting people have from us for us and have from their career and their. And today we're interviewing Marco,
Again.
which is like very interesting person and a very interesting software engineer, which I specifically bring today here to talk about. Aside from your career and your insights in your career, I always admire the way that you have to approach studying. Yeah.
I see.
And how continuously improving and adapt to whatever the industry throws at you, and also like this hunger that you have to be really good at knowing one topic. And that's, as I said, admirable. And I think that I was thinking quite a lot, not about the interview only, but it's like how can I absorb that knowledge in order to pass it to our students and our mentorees.
Well,
So,
before starting, a big disclaimer is that it's never been like this. Not always. If I go in the past of 15 years, more or less, or 10 years, I was not definitely the best student in the world. But of course,
So-
people grow up, so
it's a story
I
of-
changed too.
it's a story of improving.
Yeah, of
And
course.
it's a story of
growth.
becoming that person. So it's even more interesting.
Cool.
So actually, I'm going to leave that a little bit that to you, but also like just as an introduction, I'm not going to go into details, but your career has been an example, and it's something that I think that everybody should like look up to. And congratulations for your achievements. So for that, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Whoa.
So Marco, who are you?
Okay, who's Marco? Well, it's me. As anyone can guess by my accent, I am an Italian guy living in Barcelona. But yeah, I'm not only an Italian guy. I'm also a software engineer. And my story, if we look at 5 years back in the past, was way different from how it is now. Because actually, I finished my studies in Italy as a software engineer. I had a bachelor. I have a bachelor degree in computer science. But at the end of that path, I realized it was not really the kind of learning experience I wanted to have. So cool. I faced a couple of options in front of me, which one was, okay, let's continue with a master degree in Italy at the typical university, you know. Or there is a better option, maybe. It's like a bet, because I was not really into this sort of things. I know very little about this kind of learning experiences. So I started considering a bootcamp. Bootcamp actually 5 years ago were rising in popularity. But I knew very little, so it was completely bet, a lot of money for me. And especially it was a different experience because I was moving to a different country. But yeah, in the end I said, if I don't try it now, when I'm gonna do it? So I bet on a bootcamp and I moved to Barcelona. This bootcamp is like 3 months. You know, the typical model is 3 month long, 6 month long. It's typical full immersion in this. But it was,
The US model.
yeah, US model, let's say so. But it is also something I was looking for because I wanted a really immersive experience, something 100% focused in it, where I had the chance to speak with people all day long about coding and learn the most from it. So cool, I came here, I did this bootcamp and was one of the best experiences, honestly, that I had here in Barcelona because it was really insightful for me. Not only because I learned a lot from the people around me, but also because it helped me to shape my mind completely differently from how I learned it from the Italian model, so from the university model. And this brings then to a constant evolution in terms of learning, not only as a software engineer, but mostly in everything, also in things that I do constantly during my life. And this is good because that's why I was saying that I'm completely different now from how I was 5 years ago.
Okay.
5 years ago, I was not able to manage my time. I was not able to have a model to learn. Now it's part of me. It's an habit. It's something that comes automatically.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. I mean, well, this mindset, no, of the boot camp is more like practice oriented and to the skill that you're going to need later.
Totally,
no?
100%.
Yes, is that model? Okay, cool. So then, well, you already like explained how like your career started and everything. So how like on this experience of joining on a boot camp, what is specific that change of model for you? Is like how do you see the difference before how you were approaching things before and how you're approaching these things after the
Yeah.
bootcamp, which I already knew you by the time, and then I already see that I don't know, that systematical approach from you.
Yeah. Well, in my case, the thing is that doing more practical things was the right way. I used to study a lot of theory, but not really putting in practice what I was learning. While in the bootcamp experience, I was doing 12 hours a day coding, and I was trying and reviewing stuff that I saw the day before, maybe. So that's actually the things that made the huge difference. Since I had to focus on practices, on practice, it was just up to me to really put my hands on the keyboard and try making a lot of mistakes, of course. But that's the way, of course. If you don't do any error, you don't learn. So that's probably the critical factor that helped me to switch to a different learning model. So what happens when you end the bootcamp? It's not that, okay, I know everything, and that's it. No, you have to keep studying a lot, way more than what you did before.
Yeah,
and you need a strict model to do it. Otherwise, it's really difficult to be consistent.
That's what impressed me. Like usually, people join a bootcamp because one of the things that it makes you is accountable. Yeah, it's like you're there, like you invested quite like an amount of money in order for like having this environment, and this environment is pressuring you to be performant. And
to be the best version of myself.
Yes, and to be accountable of that thing. But then that's what I was talking about. When you finish the bootcamp, then it's like you keep learning at that pace, and that's what interests me about. And I'm going to ask about it like in a minute. But before that, I noticed that like you didn't like talk about what you're doing, like currently doing, which I think
now.
is very, right now,
cool.
which is very interesting. So if you want, you can also talk about that thing.
Sure. So
where are you in professional terms right now?
As a professional.
As a professional.
Well, after the bootcamp experience, so the main learning experience, actually I started working in different environment. I started working in the same bootcamp because I was actually staying there as a teacher, as an instructor, and that was one of the probably the best working experience I had in terms of self-learning, because this taught me not only to shape my learning model, but also in the end to communicate it. I was not really a great communicator. I was not able to explain topics as I do now. Honestly, I was really bad at that. But being forced to expand on topics, communicate them, was really one of the things that helped me to create my soft skills. But of course, in this environment as a software engineer, you also need hard skills, and you gotta learn a lot of stuff.
Hard and soft skills.
Hard and soft skills, both of them.
And the interesting thing about this is exposing yourself. That you expose yourself.
Yeah.
It's not like you learn like only the hard skills, but you have to explain them.
Yeah, you have to.
And you put yourself like under that light, and it's like people are asking you questions.
But that's also a good thing about being a student in a bootcamp and being an instructor. Since you get questions in so many different ways, you have to find enough ways to explain the concept so that each person is able to understand it. So that's something that also I really liked in terms of studying at the bootcamp, because I was able to ask a question, I don't understand the answer, I can ask it again, maybe in a different way, and I get a different answer with the same concept until I get it. So that was something that really helped me to create my soft skills in this experience. But that's the point. there was a good balance in terms of working on hard skills and soft skills, while I was looking for something more art skill oriented. I really wanted to code 8 hours a day, learn a lot of good practices, actually always look for best practices. So I decided to switch to a different role, something really focused on development.
Product.
Yeah, product. And that's why I moved to another startup, which was simply working on an e-commerce, but was selling an interesting product. It actually is a company that sells tickets for events. And that was good because you had the chance to work with the latest technology. The tech stack was really starting from scratch. So we had the chance to create the project based on our interest and implementing the practices we'd like. That was great because I had a lot of freedom and I had the chance to try stuff, looking for my own best practices, actually create some patterns that I still use that I didn't find online, but trying and trying, you create your own methodology. And that was probably the moment where in the shortest period, I grow the most. But of course, in the end, it's not always the perfect word. So whenever you get a pandemic, you're maybe forced to also switch job. Just think about a company that sells tickets for events and clubs. What could happen during a pandemic where everyone is blocked at home?
Yeah, that really shake the market.
That shake the market. It's hard. So you're also forced to maybe leave something like an environment that you like to look for something else. But when you close a door, another one opens. And this, of course, brought me to work on another different kind of company, something bigger. I've been working in academic environment, then startup environments with this product. So the third step for me was to move on a company that was bigger, more structured, where I could also learn not only about coding and development, but also about how our company works. So structure, practices, how to shape and refine a real product. So that's why I moved to a bigger company, still here in Barcelona, where I had the chance to work in bigger teams, actually with many more people, where I met a lot of talented people, and that was also good for me.
Learning that how to live with a smaller impact.
Yeah, exactly. Where you're not just a number, of course, but you're not even a person, the one that appears on the list of employees, and everyone remembers your name.
Yeah,
this happens when you move to bigger companies. It's normal. You start working on more difficult things. You have maybe even a bigger impact in your little, but for yourself it feels different. You don't see that impact. It's way more difficult to bring an impact that yourself can see. So I spent a couple of years here. It was really good.
Was it scale up?
Sorry?
It was a scale up or a bigger organization, like an organization?
No, it was a big organization. Actually, it's a multinational organization. They have, I think, they handle marketplaces, and they are in, I think, 18 countries. So it's a big one, over 5,000 employees. So it was completely different environment.
Okay, yeah, no scale up, no.
No.
I get it.
Well, it was a great experience. The only thing that brought me to change my job in the past, in the past 3 months, because I started recently in a new company, is that I was feeling a bit stuck in terms of learning. That's the thing that brought me to move across different jobs in the past 5 years. Is that there is a moment where I feel stuck and I'm not ready yet to sit down and just stay there. Yeah. I'm not ready for that job that you keep for 30 years, where you do your little thing each day. No, I want something that stimulates me, somewhere where I can actually keep learning.
Yeah.
And to do this, as you grow, as a software engineer particularly, you need to be with smarter people than you, always. You need to have around people that have a wider experience, that have touched so many things that you have no idea of what you're actually talking about, especially something that makes you feel a little bit of imposter syndrome again, Again. Because of course, you work in a place, you start and you feel like, oh, I don't know anything.
No.
Then you start getting the pace of the company, of the product, and you feel like, okay, I'm feeling good, until you reach the point where you know almost everything about the product. So your imposter syndrome is gone. You maybe are mentoring other people, other colleagues, and you feel like, cool, what do I have to learn now here? There is anything for me, anything that I can still learn. So your imposter syndrome is gone when you feel that way.
Yeah.
And if you want to learn, you have to move.
Yeah, with imposter syndrome is bad, but as this kind of achiever profile, understanding or realizing that you're the smarter around, or I suppose I guess that's not actually a good feeling either.
Yeah, I don't like to think as myself as
No,
the
no,
smartest
you
around.
don't.
I
That's
wouldn't
what I was
define
saying. I
myself
guess.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the thing. There were people, for example, where I used to work that were smarter than me and knew a lot, but there wasn't the opportunity on that environment to learn from them, for example.
Mhm.
So
No,
you
but
don't have any other
yeah, no,
choice.
it's not thinking. It's not thinking that you are like. Nah, it's not thinking that you're the smartest around, because that's difficult to do that when
Yeah,
you are like performant. You are always like that feeling of what you say, getting stuck.
yeah, getting
Like,
stuck.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's why in the end, the best opportunity came past summer when a company that is leader in its sector in terms of observabilities, APM metrics, and search, especially, is a search company. They're really a dream for a developer,
Mm.
for who knows what they do. And since this company also has open source code, I had the chance to, before applying and understand if I was really interested in them, see what they were doing. I was able to check actually their code, what I was going to work on. And that was super interesting to me. It was awesome.
Quite a systematical approach again.
Yeah,
So,
quite a systematical approach. Good. But
no, it's good. It's good.
yeah, I mean, you learn from mistakes. And in the past, my mistake was that, okay, the description of the offer listing says we do this practice and that. And then in the end, they're not really reflected in your day-to-day job. So, okay, this time let's make sure I know what I'm going to work on. I check it and it was awesome. I really liked it. There were so many things I didn't know and I still don't know because I just started. But that's the thing. Just reading their code and doing the interviewing process and everything, I felt like, oh my God, I have so much to learn here. This is so good. Hopefully they're going to take me.
Yeah. Well, which is actually like a good way to, I don't know, search for topics to learn. Right?
Yeah,
It's like you go to that.
So
I don't know,
this
job
company
position offer, and then you see the technologies, and you're like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I was not really interested in the role position on the seniority they were offering. I was really into, okay, I wanna get there because just about the people I met, their experience, the way they speak about what we do, it was really so interesting that I would have joined the company like close eye. In the end, the process went well. They liked me as I liked them, so they offered me a position as a software senior engineer, where I work day to day on backend, front end. I'm a software engineer, really. I'm not just focused on a specific technology, but I need to be able to touch a little bit of everything, being, of course, specialized on what the product requires. So that's awesome to me because as a person that likes to learn, it's probably next month I will have maybe to learn a little bit of Go, I don't know, or of another library that I never touched.
That's what top companies are and performance companies are interested about. Like I have actually, I think I told that in the last podcast. I repeat myself, but yeah, I talked to, like, I know about some friends that have a startup as well. Really performing one. They got like a series. I think
A C-series round of investment. What?
Factorial.
Yeah, of course.
Series A. So, and for example, in their job description, they have that, like, the disclaimer that they are not interested in what programming languages do you know.
They want
but
software engineers.
That you are able to catch up and then you're adaptive, because I think that adaptability is like one of the skills that are more needed and that are going to be more needed even in the future. We're going to talk about the future later, and I'm going to ask you about that. But wait a second. Okay, before going into, well, congratulations for that.
Thank you. I'm
journey
really happy so far for the first 3 months. So I'm really happy so far for the first 3 months. Cool, But yeah, it's been a constant evolution process of growth.
Yeah. No, congrats for the
Thank you.
trip, and it's all you deserve. So congrats. So before going into the next topic, which I'm going to like start asking more on the like continuous learning topic and everything. Let me go and check the different materials, because I think that I want to check that this is still recording.
Go for it. Don't worry.
You can tell us a joke if you want.
Well, a joke. Once I met a programmer called AROL. I don't know if you know him. Was really good developer, but had a lot of issues with the camera, a computer, and he didn't really understand if the camera was working. So he just went there to check if this was working. And apparently it is. And that's all the jokes that I have.
For a second, I thought that you were going to like tell some kind of embarrassing story.
I have embarrassing stories, don't worry. I have embarrassing stories, but
no.
we keep them for another podcast maybe.
Yeah, for another podcast. Let's go.
I also have videos.
Okay, that's going to be.
Let's keep on this.
Let's make sure that's going to be an audio podcast.
Perfect.
Audio only podcast. Cool. Okay, so continuous learning. Like I always like have thoughts about. Well, I also defend it myself, but it's curious how it's always that. I'm sure that happens with other like professional environments and with other professional paths, but it's always like this relation between software developers and learning. Yeah, it's like that thing. Like, I love learning, so I want to be a software developer. I heard that like many times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, yes. It's like yeah, I like to be a software developer because I love like the way of like it never ends.
Yeah, that's true. And
without
never
changing
end.
the topic, it never ends. So it's like without changing the topic, because of course you can learn like whatever you want, and of course because you like it. Okay, because on history there are like infinite like topics as well, statistics, anything.
There are not enough lives in the end for learning everything.
But it seems like that, I don't know, that feeling of continuous like improvement or that we're always evolving, always some things that sometimes are bad, that is like we're getting like so many frameworks popping up and everything.
One each week, mostly.
Yes. But then it's like, I don't know, has always been like tight. And that's true. Like as software engineers and with all the years of experience that you have as a software engineer, you don't stop learning. Yeah. You have like always like another topic and yet another topic to learn about. So that's what I was saying before. Like one of the things that I admire from you is that systematic approach. So before getting into that, in your own words, why do you think it's important for a software engineer to keep learning and to never stop learning, even after a bootcamp or even after a good job or when you are well positioned?
Well, this is my personal point of view, of course. And for me is that I've seen many people in my life. I'm not that old, but you see people around you older than you. And I've seen many people working on the same place, on the same thing for 20, 25, 30 years or even more. And I see their face. I see what they feel the morning when they have to go to work and how they come back at home. I see my parents, of course. You probably can see yours, and anyone from our generation have seen their parents. Mm-hmm. And that's what I don't want for myself. I don't want to come home tired because I don't like my job anymore, which is just a job to earn a salary and survive. That's not what I really like for myself. I prefer something that keeps stimulating me, where my job is something that I want to do, is something for which I wake up to. I want to wake up in the morning to do a job that I still like. And to continue liking your job, especially as a software engineer, you need to keep learning something. Otherwise, you feel stuck on a topic. You do that topic, that specific programming language, that practices each day, that becomes a routine. And if it becomes a routine, it starts getting boring. And that's something I constantly try to avoid. Of course, working as a software engineer on something really specific doesn't get boring because there are always new things that you can learn, that you can apply, practices, architecture, new library to discover or to invent, right?
Yeah.
So it's something that luckily helps you to keep you informed about how it's evolving this ecosystem, which evolves really fast and doesn't depend only on you. So if you want to keep the pace of how the programming languages, the practices are continuously growing and making actually easier to code, you need to learn. You need to inform yourself to keep studying, or at least keep alive that curiosity that you have in the beginning. And that's something that, of course, I believe makes 51% of the job, keeping your curiosity about software development alive. Because whenever you turn off that switch, it's more difficult then to keep learning and studying and keep yourself interested actually in what we do.
Yeah, and it's curious. Actually, I saw myself reflected on that. Even though, like, sometimes, like, I don't know, like driving a program like this, sometimes can be seen like a little bit repetitive. But as any job, there are parts that are repetitive, of course.
True.
Not everything can be automated,
Unfortunately not.
but there's always like this little spark, mostly on the projects that the students are doing. That there's like something that keeps you like alive when I'm waking up. Sometimes it's like, oh, I want to
I see.
help on that thing that I was helping yesterday, or that they were telling me the problem, and I want to help on that because I have that curiosity as well, or it's a problem that I didn't find myself like maybe in a long time, and now I want to like do it in another way or something. So,
This is something that definitely helps you to keep the curiosity alive. Seeing the
Yeah.
problem that other people, students, are facing in terms of software development, and this like lights a bulb for you, and you start thinking, how I will do it? How can I help this part to be implemented in the right way? I will probably do this way, but they don't know. So let's speak with them about this. And this, of course, helps you a lot because even if it's something that you
always
know,
find a new thing.
yeah,
Like,
you always
a new thing, and that's something that is different. Or they come
man.
with this crazy ideas.
Totally. There are
Thank
so many little quirks that I think I know a lot about the programming language I know the most, which is JavaScript. No way. I learned something just 3 days ago that I was not aware of. And I read 7 books about JavaScript.
I was just saying this to my students today.
Man,
It's like,
it's impossible. I really read 6 books about the programming language, plus other 3 about best practices, coding practices. I really read a lot. I watched so many courses, read so many code from other people, and
find
still
that thing.
you see that small picture saying, hey, look at these interesting tips I found out. You say, come on, really? I never found out about this one.
Yes, exactly.
But this is good.
That
because
little thing that changes this, like perspective completely.
Exactly.
Is like,
And you feel like, okay, cool. There are still things that I can
understand JavaScript now.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Well.
finally, I
Finally, I got
and
it.
you're wrong. You don't understand JavaScript.
Never.
Well, this is why it's amazing, the title of the book by Kyle Simpson. You don't
of
know
course.
JavaScript.
Yeah, I
and
read
you
those.
never will.
Those were the 6 books I was mentioning, plus other 3 which are more
And
focused on best
and
practices.
that applies for all languages. All languages.
They
all
applies for all
practices.
practices, exactly. Whenever that's actually was one of the steps I took in my learning experience, because when I ended the bootcamp, I knew about JavaScript. I thought I knew a lot about JavaScript, but as the books mention, you don't know JavaScript.
Yeah.
And I didn't know JavaScript.
That applies
honestly.
for everyone.
Yeah, of course. I didn't know JavaScript at all. I knew what I thought I was knowing about it. But reading those books, I learned really, really a lot because I wanted to go deeper in the programming language. Before saying, okay, I can work on practices, on architecture, on the best possible corporate enterprise practices that are out there, I need to know how works the basics. It's like walking. You cannot run fast if you are not able to walk, right? So that was one of probably the first steps I got. I was reading those books at home. Actually, it was in a particular situation because my girlfriend was not here in Barcelona. We had a distance relationship. So I had a lot of spare time when I was at home. And so what can I do? Okay, let's read these books. This will definitely help me in the long term.
Okay, I see that relationship. It's like, what is he? what is he doing right now in Barcelona alone? Like
Exactly.
he's like
The typical reading
like
yellow
reading
books
all
about
these JavaScript
JavaScript.
books in the world.
Exactly. Typical. Oh, he's probably going to party with so
Party,
many people.
it's like,
Yes, reading JavaScript.
yet another book of JavaScript.
Exactly.
Enterprise architecture.
Yeah, actually, all the time that I was really useful for myself to not only learn but to shape some habits.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
this
that's
is
a good
probably the most important part of how
Okay.
I still learn.
And that goes for the next question.
Cool.
So first, why it's important to study. The next one is how one does study. Like
Oh.
how a software engineer, aside from the work or aside from, well, not the bootcamp, don't study on the bootcamp because that's already enough. But when you have a job, or how do you continue studying? What's the thing is, it's difficult sometimes. You want to try something. You want to like understand better this topic or that other, or just I don't know, learn Ruby on Rails, another language. I don't know, anything like that. You try, you buy that course, right? And then you try a little bit, and it's like, yeah, I'm going to find it. You take like a lot of hours the first day, and then
Yeah, exactly.
that's it.
That's
Leave it
the
in there.
main issue, I believe.
You have a nice library on Coursera,
A lot of
Udemy,
books there you never read.
and you absolutely the book have amazing bookshelf, but you leave them. So here where it comes like I don't know, like what do we need to continue studying and to be consistent about it?
Yeah. It's a mix of what you just mentioned and what I was saying before. You use the word consistent, right? And they use the word habit before. It's a mix of them. What will help you to really learn a lot in the long term and keep you interested in what you do is to be resilient in what you do, to create a consistent habit in learning. But this shouldn't be a pain. You shouldn't say, "Oh, I have to dedicate an hour to study because I have to." No, I want to. Or it becomes so automatic in your lifestyle that you don't even to worry about that. That even those 5 minutes that you take are random and you don't realize you are actually studying or learning something. But of course, this doesn't come out of anything. When I was at university in Italy, I was definitely not like this. I was a person that, okay, schedule from the university is gone. Cool. Let's go out with the friends. Let's enjoy the life. I was not really focused on study, and makes sense. It makes sense because I was younger. I was focused on also other stuff. I don't regret anything, definitely. But when I ended with the university and I came here to Barcelona to the bootcamp, I was that kind of person still. I didn't have any habit, any consistency in learning. It's something that I built on time. I built in time. And to do it is just a matter of creating an habit, as I was saying. You cannot say, as you mentioned, okay, let's take this book or let's buy this course and I will watch 8 hours of a course in a day. That's not really productive, in my opinion, because you focus those 8 hours, you watch a course, you go to sleep, the day after, it's gone. You remember.
Superficial.
You remember something, of course, but
knowledge.
it's superficial knowledge. It's really
you know
difficult.
it exists.
Yeah, it exists, but it's really difficult to retain that knowledge. So what I believe helped me the most is something that then I adopted also for other learning experiences. So I said, okay, since this doesn't really make sense, let's cut like 10 to 15 minutes each day to learn something new I don't know. For example, at the time I was learning Spanish and API from the browser. So these were my main learnings.
Well, Spanish that I have to say that you and me met in English.
Yeah, we met in
were
English.
talking English for a long time.
Yeah.
And you learned the Spanish at that way that now for the podcast we were like having a difficult time.
Yeah,
like,
it's kind of difficult now.
switching to English. So
It's kind of difficult to
you did
speak
a good
English
job
now with you.
with your Spanish. So
Yeah, I mean, now when I spent 5 years in Barcelona, so it makes sense that I have to speak Spanish.
Well,
makes sense.
But
in the beginning, since we were working in English, of course, I had no chance to practice my Spanish.
Yeah.
So how do we improve it? Cool. Each night before going to sleep, I was learning 15 new words, just vocabulary, 15 new words that I didn't know. And of course, 15 new words don't change your life. You don't learn Spanish just learning 15 words for a week. So 90 words at the end of the week. No, it doesn't help you. But if while you practice, you force yourself to speak with people in a different language, and incrementally you learn 15 words each night, just multiply this for 1 month if you do it. If you really do it for 1 month, you learn 450 words. And if are the right 450 words, you're able to have a conversation with no problem. So
that's vision. That's
yeah.
vision. No, that's vision.
Yeah.
That's like not only having the process, but it's like, okay, you put
It's
that in
also the
numbers,
mission.
and although the numbers are like, this is not an exact science,
But
that gives you
yeah,
a vision of
that's a
where you
thing
want to
that
be.
that's a thing that I
goal.
repeat. That it's not only the goal; it's a thing that I repeat constantly to my girlfriend. She now studying and she's working as well as software engineer, as a software developer. And I always tell her, she asks me a lot of time, what can I study now? What can I look for in terms of new technology? I tell her, do you know about this? I ask her questions, and she tell me, no, but how do I study it? So I tell her the same. Try to learn a small thing each day. One small thing, like a method. Go to the documentation of JavaScript, check a method that you've never seen, read documentation, and try it out. It takes 15 minutes. Those pages are really short. Just read documentation and try it out on a console. And try to think what possible use cases you could have with that method. Cool, you do it 1 week, 7 methods. Nice, you learn something new. Do it for 1 year. If you do it for 1 year, you know almost all the methods, or at least almost all of those that you use the most in your development process. Of course, there are things that I still don't know, because
gives you freedom and speed.
Of
well,
course,
that gives you speed, and speed gives you
it gives you speed, because then is experience. Also because since you read about that method, maybe another time you see a post on LinkedIn of a person sharing that method again, and if you read it again, even if you already know about this, if you don't skip to the next post and you read it again, you are actually retaining that information better in your brain. It's something that you remember in 5 years, maybe, when you will see it. And you will remember also what's the syntax behind it. Imagine seeing something like this for 10 times. It's easier then. It just helps you to shape your mental model around the code that you're using. I actually now see the code without thinking about the syntax that is behind it. Because I think about this like small objects in my mind that moves
you
like...
have the scope in your brain.
Exactly, I have the scope
it
in
feels
my
like
brain.
That. It feels like that. You have the scope
Yeah,
in your brain.
it feels like that, honestly. So it's a matter of creating the habit of improving that very little each day. There is this really, really good meme or picture generally that is in internet, where you have 1%, and if each day you do 1% better than the day before, and the end of the year, in 1 year, you are 37 times better.
It's the compound interest of learning.
Exactly.
It's compound learning.
But if you do if you do 1% less, you go back. You're not learning, and of course you're losing knowledge because you don't rehearse it. Try to not code for 1 year and check an implementation, one of yours, in 1 year again. If it's yours, maybe you will get it immediately. But if I ask you to do something in terms of code, you probably lost something about... You maybe don't remember the exact syntax of a method that you knew by heart before.
Yeah.
You're going back.
That kind of happened to me.
That could happen,
Being
of
an
course.
engineering manager that you don't code that much,
I see.
happens.
That could happen. That's why I say that 1% each day really helps you to grow. And of course, if you want to proceed as a software engineer in your career, you don't want to be a junior or a mid always. You aspire to be a senior engineer in a big company, or even maybe a staff engineer, principal engineer. You need to keep learning. Otherwise, you will always be at that 1 instead of growing 37 times each year. That's what brought me to build the habit, which, as I said, is not something you cannot ask yourself, because we are not made to be immediate learners. You cannot ask yourself to constantly and immediately create an habit out of nowhere. You need to force yourself. You need to start really, really small.
Be consistent.
Exactly.
practicing.
You need to ask yourself to dedicate 5 minutes of your time each day. Bring them out of any time whenever you feel you're feeling good to learn. Night, morning. I'm an early morning person, for example. But if you prefer during night, just do there. Cut 5 minutes of your time in the beginning and use them to learn something that you have never seen, even a small thing. That will create an habit. After 90 days,
Yeah.
6 months, you will do it automatically.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because usually habits or classically habits or systematical people that follow habits are related, like are related or they look like the morning people.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like that.
totally not.
I was reading a book the other day that say that hey, like being an early person or a night owl, it's naturally right. Actually, like genetically between the tribes, genetics actually favor the tribes that had people
That
that
wake up in the
had
morning.
different cycles
Uh-huh.
of sleep. So then they could
Yeah.
be watching like during the night, or they were more aware during the night and everything. And that makes sense. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
makes
that's
sense,
like
of
too
course.
much. Like,
No, well, everyone should do
don't feel
it
bad.
whenever they feel. Of
Excellent.
course, it's the
Don't
best
feel
schedule
bad
for them.
for being a night owl.
No, no,
and you
definitely.
can make the habit.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can make the habit at any time. In the end, of course, doing it in the morning, I believe, at least based on, of course, what science says, you are just waking up, you are more rested, you can focus on the important things and then go on. But that's, of course, up to everyone. It's based on preferences. So there are people that
You always
code
have
better in the night than in the morning, and
Even if
vice
it's
versa.
night or day, the cycles are cyclical, are the same. So
It's cyclical.
cool. So what I was going to ask is like specifically, if I have to learn like a hard skill now, like let's say a technology, how I would do it, like how would be a good format to do it. But I don't know if you want to transform the question a little bit, like you can talk in generics,
Mhm.
like just responding the question, or if you want, we can like first like choose a topic,
Okay.
like a hard skill, like it's worth
Something
learning.
particular.
Huh?
Okay, something concrete, you mean?
Yeah, something concrete, like I don't know, domain driven design or
For example,
hexagonal
Excel
or
architecture.
anything. Like for example, I'm going to make this question first. What is the last thing that you learned that you felt like really proud about, or that is like really cool thing to have or to know as a software engineer?
Well, this is interesting. Something that I found out was really cool actually. I actually, when I just joined the company, the one I'm working with now, I found something like in the middle, a process in the middle, which was refactoring an existing part of the code base, reusing a better state management. It's a web application that it was not legacy, but some better state management was required. So what I found out, the engineers working on it were thinking about, was using state machines and manage also the state with observables. So
Okay.
I knew about state machines and observables, but I never mixed them together. So seeing how they were approaching this implementation, and not only the concrete implementation, but also the design, was really cool. I'm not saying this is something that every software engineer should learn about because it's really specific to our case. But for example, state machines is a concept I really like. I would really like to work more with them, especially bring them in a specific part of our code base. But of course, it always depends on the requirement of the product. You cannot work on state machine for every case. You cannot use other different state management for other. It really depends on the requirement of the project. And this is the same for programming language. I'm now talking about JavaScript and TypeScript, but there are programming languages that are better suited for some specific projects. So this is the last thing that I was looking at. Also, something really interesting is runtime types. So TypeScript, we know how it works. It's not doing the type checking runtime. But there is a library that actually does it and allows you to define different behaviors depending if a type is actually checking and matching our data. Otherwise, fall back to a different kind of data. And this was really cool because really create the types with TypeScript out of the box for you, but also allow you on runtime to check if your data are really something, so that you can define a fallback plan. Let's call it this way.
So I like to aid a little bit your code on like the value checkings in terms of errors, nulls, and defines, all this kind of
Also,
stuff. No,
exactly.
oh, that's cool.
No, it's really cool. I liked it. I've never seen that part before joining this company, and I thought, well, this is so cool. Honestly, it's something new to learn.
Okay, like the first one, things a little bit more like big.
Yeah.
Like because of the observable. Okay, so let's say that I don't know about observables, I don't know about the state machines, and I want to, I don't know, like learn about them.
Cool.
And how would you recommend me to approach that learning?
Well,
Like maybe from looking for resources first, or
Yeah,
whatever
exactly.
it comes to mind from zero.
It really depends on your learning approach, on how you want to approach actually new technology. There are people that at first go for the documentation. There are others that check a tutorial on YouTube, or some others that buy a course that it's $500 available. So there are different options. The one that I usually like is, first of all, get a general idea about the technology itself, which is a library, a concept, programming language, whatever. Get a general idea from the community. So I usually check out for a couple of good articles, blog posts, but from not from anyone, from people that really know about this point. Maybe that's usually my first choice, the creator of a library or of a programming language.
Okay.
That's one of my first choices. I see and check out maybe the introduction they made on a YouTube video or on the blog post. That's a good reference because it gives you a good overview of, for example, why they created that technology. Not only for what's useful, but why they want it.
Yeah.
Because these explain the needs for that specific technology. So something that I really value. So I get the general idea about this. Then comes the part where you really want to learn how it works. So if documentation is good enough, it's a good starting point because you get the typical getting started, where in 10 minutes, you're able to create your first script using the technology or that library. That's a good starting point to at least see if you understand it, if you like it. Then when it's time to go deeper, I mean, with documentation, you learn what you have available, what you can use. But then, of course, you need to apply it using creativity. And for that, blog resources from a reference developer, people really good at that, are good resources. Practices from existing code bases is something that I really enjoy because, cool, I see that this library works really well and they're doing something particular that I don't know it works. For example, I don't know, serializing a key that they use to create a cache, something like this. Cool, it's interesting to see how they did it. So if the code is open source, let's just dig into their repository and try to understand how they implemented this functionality. Yeah. That's something that I really like because, especially if I know that the person that did this code, it's a reference developer, it's someone that really knows fact.
I mean, if it's a used library, that's already
exactly,
like enough proof.
Exactly. It's good to learn practices from people that have been in the field way longer than you, that have maybe 10, 15 years, 20 years of experience in this stuff, so that it's not necessarily that they're better developers than you, but they've seen other different scenes compared to you. And this also allows you to understand their choices.
It's synthesized knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
You can get from another brain and you don't have to go
exactly.
that baggage. You can learn it from the product.
Yeah, exactly. So checking the real code implementation, looking at examples, experimenting also, trying out things that I've never read, but I think based on my base knowledge, what I learned about the programming language, reading all those books, this is something that I think and I believe could work. Never read about it. Let's experiment. I don't know if it's good practice or best practice. Let's try it out. And then let's propose it and we'll see feedback from people, from other developers. And that's another good way to learn.
All of this work following this system that you said before.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be like one all at once.
No, definitely.
It has to be
not.
like on these 10, 15 minutes first. Like
exactly.
Every day.
It's every day. Every day you start, for example, as you said, example on learning something. Cool. The first day, I didn't know anything about this runtime types with that specific library. Okay, I know nothing at all about this. I see why we need it. Let's see a little bit of how it works. I read a README file that was like 4 pages long. It took me 10 minutes, more or less, 15 minutes. I understood the half of the things that were written there. So the day after, I went back to this one. I went back to the same file, reading it again. And at that point, 100% was clear. But I was not retaining that information. I needed to practice this. So third day, I read it again. And on the fourth day, I tried to put in practice what I was learning. So in 4 days, I learned just one thing. But I'm now able to retain that information. First, because of practice on this process. I did it so many times for other things. Now, when I apply the same learning process on a new concept, I'm faster. It's a matter of practice. Even your brain, I believe now my memory it's better than it was 5 years ago because I practice on learning new stuff, retain those informations. And now sometimes I feel like, wow, how could I even remember the syntax of these specific things that I didn't use in 1 year maybe?
One of the things that I was most impressed about learning from meditation is that your brain, when you practice meditation on a regular basis, your brain changes. And not only meditation, like, because it sounds like mystical, no? It's like, oh, it's only meditation. No, even playing Tetris. When you play Tetris on a daily basis, that effect on that you go to sleep and you're still like placing blocks,
Yeah.
the Tetris effect, is actually your brain doing the effort on changing. And it changes physically. Your brain changes physically, like it moves, it adapts for creating better connections on how to solve blocks,
Yeah.
on how to meditate and disconnect. And this is how
You see,
meditation
that's
works,
really interesting.
and how to learn. If you're learning every day, your brain changes
To learn better and
to
faster.
learn better and faster, because it's like it's an activity that
Yeah.
you're doing every day.
Totally. I think is something that really can happen if you keep practicing and especially on your methodology to learn, which is not strict in terms of how I do it, how I learn, is not essentially what everyone should do. It's a method that worked for me. I didn't shape it like writing on a piece of paper. I should do this and this. I tried. Sometimes I wake up for in the morning for 1 hour and a half earlier to study because I was more into this. Now I'm not waking up so early because I'm learning a lot while working. And there were other times while I was learning at evening, for example. So it really depends on the period. And the
You're
thing
always
is,
more motivated. less
exactly,
motivated.
also personal life matters. So
10-15 minutes is a minimum.
yeah, 15 minutes is not a minimum. There are days that I don't do it, for example.
Okay.
There are days that while I'm literally scrolling on LinkedIn, I see something that I know by heart already. I don't know, whatever. Any small things, any small quirk that you already know because you've seen it a lot of time and you use it on a daily basis. But out of curiosity and of interest, you read it anyway. It's 3 lines of code, and your brain checks and says, okay, whatever is written here is correct, or it's not. And this allows you also to recognize errors. So, for example, it's that small learning, those 30 seconds, is a debugging learning. Understand that if I see this once, this doesn't work. This is not correct. And it was just 30 seconds while scrolling.
Yeah.
Maybe before sleeping or in the morning while drinking the coffee. I don't know. It really depends on the moment. So there is not a minimum of time. It's just do it. Just learn something new. If it takes 1 minute, good. If it takes 15 minutes, good. If you have enough time to dedicate it and learn not only one, but a couple of things or wider concept, something that, as you said, DDD, hexagonal architecture, concept that requires time, if you have time to spare on it, do it, dedicate it. There will be a period of your life when you will have hours, maybe 1 hour a day to dedicate on learning. And since you're into it, you like it, you really want to understand how this thing works, that hour will fly. You won't even realize, maybe you will say, I will stay 15 minutes on this, and you realize that's past 1 hour and a half. That's the typical deep zone. When you're there, you don't realize because you're enjoying it.
Zone. You're like fully.
You're in your zone.
Okay. Well, I have to say that I think that I'm very sorry because it's like our time is over.
Yeah.
But we have to stop it here. But I think that we are like living at the top of the conversation. So hopefully we can make it to session 2 because I think that there's a lot of insights in here, and I want to continue learning about the state machines. And
Cool.
observables.
Hey, whenever you want.
No. It's like we're planning here my study schedule, study like system now. So okay, nothing. I want to say, like, just as a recap, is like it's important to continue studying because to stay alive. And also, like, one insight that we had is like continue studying just to keep your brain active on studying as it gets easier. Yeah, it's important to do it every day. It's hard to do it every day, but it gets easier.
It gets easier by
every day,
time.
like you do it.
Yeah.
And it's important to do it.
Yeah.
And the other one is like that methodology on 2, 5, 10, 15 minutes, but consistent and learning chunks plus getting on the hard skills. I also loved the insights on getting into like the public libraries, and the reference.
Learning from others.
I remember that came to my mind. I didn't want it to interrupt, but it came to my mind 2 things, 2 people with 2 practices.
Mm-hmm.
Dan Abramov telling you how to learn Redux, telling you how to construct Redux from scratch. That was absolutely amazing. And Kenzie Dotz, more recently, telling you how to re-implement Jest.
Yes.
Just to understand Jest.
This is actually part of one of his courses.
Yes, exactly. And it's like this is actually a really good practice, which actually is what you're saying. It's like go there, try to maybe not re-implement it, but go for the source, and why not as a practice?
And make
try
experiments.
to re-implement that library in of course you're not re-implementing the total amount of Jest and all the functionalities, but the core functionalities. So I think that's like a terrific insight. So thank you very much. And hopefully we can continue talking about that. So, I don't know if
whenever you want.
final words, but thank you very much, Marco, for
thank you for inviting me.
making the time. And I think that everybody is going to enjoy it.
Cool.
So
we'll definitely have more time. We will have more time to continue if you have other questions. But cool. I hope these insights will be useful.
I love it. Thank you very much, Marco.
Cool,
Bye-bye.
Bye.